In this episode, Jake and I have a lovely conversation about all things infinite banking. Hope you enjoy listening. Thank you. Welcome to the Banking with Life podcast. I'm your host, James Neathery, and I have in the illustrious studio my youngest son, Jake Neathery, with us today. Jake, how in the world are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Of course, the illustrious studio is like right next door to his office.
My office is literally
literally on the other side of that wall. So it's been a minute since Jake and I sat down and done a recording. So we're sitting down and having a recording.
Yeah.
All right. So how's it been going? So, all of our clients know who you are. They all have spoken to you and speak with you regularly.
Yeah.
Some of the listeners may not, know what you look like.
I look like this.
And so Jake, he is not only an illustration ninja, but he's an IBC Infinite Banking Concepts coach. And anyway, so what's going on? Anything exciting happen over the last several weeks or?
I mean, yeah, I don't know what I would say. There's been a lot of good movement with our clients. I've seen a lot has come in recently. So when we're looking at like illustrations and things like that I've seen, a lot of good things, I guess is what I'm seeing out there. I'm seeing.
Well, what do you mean? Like educated consumers?
Yes.
Have good questions?
Yes. Yes.
Like genuine willingness to learn, or they've learned and they're ready to apply? What do you mean?
Yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of good things. Just, what would you say? Just across the board, I see a lot of educated clients, and the questions that do come in from our clients and from the listeners of Banking with Life podcast are usually really good questions. They're legitimate questions that have, I would just say, some thoughts. There's been some thought put behind them, and that's one of the reasons I kind of wanted to talk today. Is just kind of clarifying maybe some of the most frequently asked questions that I see a lot of. One of the things I think it would be really helpful for, I guess, you and I to talk about here today is probably that page 58, just that, bottom.
Page 58, becoming your own
banker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fifth edition. So on that page, you're going to see it's the additional information or the additional interest page where Nelson's talking about what the actual additional interest is. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when it comes to the infinite banking concept, that may be a spot that there's not a lot of clarity from a lot of the other agents out there. Maybe they use that purposefully to, not clarify things.
Yeah. And I don't know if they, do it on purpose or not, or I don't know why people do what they do. But it's a very good point. So the additional interest, and it comes up continually. I think our clients, I think most of our clients, longtime listeners, I think that we've covered this, adequately in the past, but it continues to confuse the new uninitiated person, right?
Absolutely.
And so the additional interest that Nelson is pointing out on page 58, you want to quote it?
Yeah. Of course, always have my BYOB handy. So specifically on that page, Nelson says, actually, this interest is not really interest. It is additional premium capital that has been paid into the policy that equals the interest that was being paid to the finance company. That is the reason it is adding to the cost basis of the policy. If you have trouble understanding this, go back to the grocery store on page 15. He says, if you don't understand, then contact me. So, contact us. But it's... Nelson
would have answered the phone, when he was here, he did.
Yeah.
So the additional interest, I think it's important to continually bring that up and remember, because even in speech, when we're talking, well, my policy is getting better because I'm using it. Well, what does that mean? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the policies are not more efficient, or they do not get better because you borrow against them. They get better because you pay, quote unquote, additional interest. So if I'm borrowing from the life insurance company at 5%, let's say, and I'm paying off a credit card that was at, 28% interest, if I'm going to be honest banker, I'm going to put that percentage differential between the 5 and the 28 to my policy.
Yes.
And so I'm calling it interest, right? That's what it was when you're paying it to the credit card company or whatever other third-party lender. So if I'm honest banker, and I should be, then that additional interest, that additional 23%, I'm calling interest. We call interest on the deal, but it is premium to the life insurance company.
In the form of a paid-up additions rider more often than not as well.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people, I've gotten this actually kind of recently too, and sometimes this is kind of basic for folks, but PUA and paid-up addition are the same thing. So a PUA is a paid-up addition. So I know that's maybe basic for a lot of folks out there.
And that's a rider. The paid-up additions rider is a rider to a whole life policy.
Yes.
And then too, let me say that it's premium to the life insurance company. We're calling it interest in our deal and being an honest banker and controlling that debt service, right? If we were paying them a certain amount of interest, we're going to put that same equivalent into our system. And your policy has to be designed to take it, or there's other methods to make sure and capture that interest. But we're calling it interest. It's premium to the life insurance company, but it is capital to your system.
Yeah.
And it's so simple. But also, page 70, I believe Nelson mentions that as well on that additional interest.
Yeah, and when you really break down like the additional interest and we talk about PUAs, what does a PUA do for your policy?
Paid up additions rider?
Yeah, what does a paid up addition do for your policy? It increases the cash value, the death benefit, and doing so is also going to increase the dividends each and every year.
Future dividends?
All future dividends will be increased. The paid up additions rider is very powerful to these policies. So I understand where there is confusion. So when somebody says, I borrow, and if I'm properly doing the infinite banking concept, right? I'm borrowing, I'm repaying my loans, and then I'm adding additional interest in the form of a paid up additions rider to my policy. What will happen to my policy? Well, if I'm being a good banker, I'm increasing the cash values, death benefit, and future dividends in every future year of my policy.
That's pretty powerful. And a visual would probably help on that, but you can prove that.
Yeah.
Then that kind of speaks to the actions of the owner of the policy are going to have a greater bearing on the results than even the life insurance company. It's whether somebody actually pays that additional PUA rider. Mm-hmm. And then I think I did a couple. I'm still working on a third. I did 2 kind of solo episodes on the PUA, and I think really the first 2 were just clips of previous released episode content talking about PUA. But there's a lot there. It's not, you don't have to like get really deep, esoteric, or be a life insurance expert. But the PUA, the paid up additions rider, really was created, I believe, in the 70s. My best estimate is in the 70s, in conversation with individuals in the industry, as a place to receive the dividend.
Oh,
right.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so this idea of unscheduled PUAs, where you can pay a PUA premium, greater or lower, or a flexible PUA, the unscheduled PUA premium, where you can pay a premium to the paid up additions. I think that came out in the 80s and it's very modified compared to today. Yeah,
not every company has that. Like, there's some very popular companies out there. Most recently, I was looking at State Farm and different riders they have. They don't really have a paid up additions rider. They have one for the dividend, to receive the dividend, but not like a separate paid up additions rider that you can use for your policy. Which to me, that's you think that would be like, oh, okay, this is basic, but you have to understand we're doing something. We're doing banking, right, with these policies. This is a little bit different than maybe how most companies think about their products, right? They're thinking of things from a death benefit standpoint, not necessarily a cash value standpoint. So the paid up additions rider is a great place to increase the cash value in a policy, and it does increase the death benefit as well. But comparatively to the base premium or their term premium, the paid up additions rider doesn't buy any more like death benefit than any other rider or anything else out there. In fact, it probably buys a little bit less than buys a lot less than term riders, and buys less than the base as well. Now,
Wait, say that again.
The PUA.
Yeah.
Like one PUA, if I paid, $1 of like, dollars to PUA,
Yeah.
that at most may increase my death benefit like by $3, right? But if you're paying $1 to like the base premium of a policy, that would have a higher death benefit per thousand than just the PUA itself. Now, PUAs over time, and you're paying lots of PUAs over time if you're doing these policies correctly, are going to dramatically increase the death benefit. Because while that's true, think about the volume of what you're actually paying in PUA premiums over a long period of time with a policy, a properly built banking policy. It dramatically increases that death benefit, dramatically.
Yeah, I think that no question about it. That's actually in fact true. I've come to believe that that's really the cheapest way to buy a death benefit.
Yeah,
we can buy term, and everybody's term, cheap, but and then too. Every PUA rider with the various companies is a little bit different. One company may give you 3 times the death benefit on $1 premium. At a particular age. The older you get, it would buy less. $1 PUA premium at my age might only buy $2 in death benefit. And then other companies could just be dollar for dollar. And whatever they are, which is not that big a deal. But if there is an increase, excuse me, and there will be an increase because just like you said earlier, whenever I pay the PUA premium, the majority is going to go to cash. It's going to buy additional death benefit. But the additional dividends, because the dividend paid to the PUA is increasing the death benefit, going straight to the cash value, increasing future dividends.
And death benefits.
Yeah. It's over time, it becomes dramatic.
Absolutely.
But too, then, there's, excuse me, there is a focus on, there seems to be, especially when someone is newly exposed to the infinite banking concept, becoming your own banker, there seems to be a really heavy emphasis on having as much of the premium dollar go to the PUA as possible. Yeah. And, there should be a healthy ratio for the policy to serve you well over your lifetime. But it can also become unhealthy if you're trying to weight too much premium to the PUA.
And, I don't want to, beat up what other people are doing out there in the big wide world. But if I were to point out one thing that I see a lot of is that argument on the internet, like, what is the right base to PUA ratio? Yeah. And I know if you asked me, if you asked you, or if you asked Ryan Griggs or anybody really that knows what we're talking about, and when it comes to the subject, it'll always be like, it depends, right? It depends on the case. It depends because
Jay, give me a straight answer. Give me a hard answer. I want to find out a definite answer.
Well,
I'm just saying, but yeah, it always it often goes to that. What is the right ratio?
We've built everything from 60% base premiums to 20% base premiums. It just depends on the case, depends on ratings, ages, what you can pay in premium, all of that. So when somebody, and think about it this way, right? What financial product in the world has everyone said, okay, we just build it all the same way? Oh, nothing else has to be done. No thought needs to be done. You just buy this product and it's all built the same way. Nothing has to be changed. It's like, no, of course, when you build a, banking policy, you have to take, more factors into, consideration than just, I want to get paid this, or, this is, how much the base should be. There's more than that, right? If I have a young child, who's, buying maybe their first policy, or their parents are buying their first policy on that young child, you may have 60% base. You may have 50% base. It depends.
It could be 100% base.
Absolutely. And we've written those all day long, and they're great policies.
I'm a buyer.
We are buyers.
I'm just saying, for me, I'm just saying I'm a buyer. I don't care what the ratio is. Unless it's too thin, then I'm not interested.
And why is that? So why is it that you would rather have an 80% base policy than just, maybe on a 30-year-old, an 80%, PUA policy?
Is that a question?
Yeah. Why
Perfect.
would you?
Well, here's the answer. If you look at the base, the whole life policy is what we're calling the base policy. It is a whole life policy. and it's just the base when you construct the PUA and you have other riders on there. It's term, but it's just a whole life policy is what it is. So if I'm paying 80%, and let me use round numbers for me. If I'm going to pay a $10,000 premium, in this example, it'd be an $8,000 base. Okay, so we know that in whole life insurance, or most of us know that, or you'll quickly find out that there's very little to no cash value in the first 2 years of all whole life insurance. Okay. And, we've talked about that many times. The life insurance company's weighting the cost of that policy in the first 2 years. And yes, it actually does cost a life insurance company money to put that policy on the books. And no, the agent doesn't get all that commission. Sorry, Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, you're just misleading your people. So stop it. But yes, the agents are paid. Okay. My point here is that whole life policy, a whole life insurance policy, the cash value, even though there's very little in the first 2 years, must equal the face amount at age 100. Okay, so let's say I'm paying this $10,000 premium and I'm 32 years old. Is that what you said, 32?
I think I said 20s, but yeah.
Okay, it doesn't matter, 20 or 30s, however old I am. But I'm going for the idea of how much death benefit that would produce. Maybe 300,000, maybe 250,000. Let's say 250,000. Yeah. Okay. So here I'm paying 80% of the $10,000 premium, $8,000 to the base. That $8,000 premium dollar, I know in 120 years, and I'm not going to be here, but that's the way the policy is constructed. There's going to be a $250,000 minimum face amount. Oh, I'm not impressed, James, paying $8,000 over all that time period. Yeah, okay, I'm not either. However, this is a dividend paying whole life insurance policy issued by a mutual company. They pay dividends. That dividend buys additional death benefit. So if I start out in my 30s at a $250,000 policy, it's going to wind up to be a $1.5 million, $1.8 million, $2 million policy face amount. Oh, and the cash value must equal the face amount at age 120. Okay, so there's some context, but let me give you some more context. And just keep that idea. The cash value must equal the face amount at age 120. Okay. Now we compare that to the PUA. If I pay a $10,000 or an $8,000 premium to the PUA, now we already know that that's going to buy between $8,000 and roughly $24,000 in death benefit. Okay. Between now and 120 years of age, that cash value in the PUA must equal that face amount. It's only going to go up to 1.5, 2 or 3 times. Therefore, it is going to have a smaller dividend paid comparatively. So if you look at, if I'm paying a $10,000 premium, that's the example, and $8,000 is to the base and $2,000 is to the PUA. Now, I'm going to have less liquidity. In the first 2 years, all of the liquidity comes from the PUA premium. So on a $10,000 policy, $2,000 going to the PUA. That's my liquidity in the first 2 years, roughly. $2,000 the first year, $4,000 second year. Third year, though, and beyond, the base policy has cash value. All right. Every year it increases. And my point here is, yes, I know I'm sacrificing early liquidity. But I also know I'm going to have larger dividends throughout the next 60 years. If I'm 20 or 30, I may not live to 120, but I have a pretty good chance of living to 80 and 90. And James, why do you need death benefit? Why do you need life insurance in? Because I love my people and I'm going to leave them a net death benefit. But when I retire or when I move into passive income time, I want income. And pray tell, where's that going to come from? It's going to come from these life insurance policies. And so if they're paying a dividend, and they will be my whole entire life, I want a pretty dang large dividend when I'm 75, 80, or 90. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to have a larger dividend compared if I pay a higher base premium. And I talk about this over and over and over, that the greater the PUA, the more PUA premium I have, this 80% PUA, 20% base in this example that we're talking about, that's the flexibility too, is in the PUA, and it's very limited, right? All across all companies, the PUA, the ability to go up and down in premium and catch up and all of that is very limited with all the companies. I mean, some are a little bit better than others, but whenever I start exercising that ability to move up and down in premium, and we're going to, the future is unknown. I'm going to have to go up in premium or down in premium. I have done that. I've reduced my premiums to the minimum PUA premium and then raised it right back up. The more I do that, all right, the higher the probability of a mech in the future. So it decreases the stability. All right. So, and I'm just throwing that in there. And you can't really see this stuff on a life insurance illustration. But experience over the last 19 years for me personally, and with all the clients that we have the privilege of working with, I'm telling you that a higher base premium gives you more stability. And then it goes back to your very point. It depends. How should a policy be structured? It depends on you, your duration, how long you're going to pay a premium, all of those factors, what your current financial position is. James, I just want a policy. Can I pay $5,000? Can I pay $10,000? Yes, you can, but should you? Anyway, does that answer your question though?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing I wanted to ask you and add on to that as well, which policy can you pay more premiums into over a longer period of time?
The base.
The higher base policy,
No
right?
question.
Okay, so which one's going to end up with more cash value and death benefit?
The base.
So what are we here for? When people, like, when I talk to people, I ask them, like, okay, so you're buying this policy. What are you buying it for? Are you buying it for death benefits? Almost every one of you guys tells me no. I'm buying it for the cash values. Okay, so if the man's telling you have more cash value and death benefit over the lifetime of your policy with the higher base premium policy, isn't that what we're all here for? I get the liquidity is smaller, especially in the early years, but I mean, which is important. I don't want to say that liquidity is not important, but that's not saying that we design our policies with 80% base, because we don't. But the whole thought concept,
that's all I'm saying.
The whole thought concept, though, behind all of it, right, is that a high base premium is not a bad thing.
No.
It can be a great thing. Depending on the policy, I've seen all base policies, 15 years out. And it's like, a client will come to us and like, hey, do we want to, go ahead and, exchange that? Or do we want to go ahead and surrender this policy? No, it's 15 years. It's a well-built whole life policy. Maybe the only problem with the policy is you're taking the dividends as actual cash rather than having it reinvested
or reducing the premium.
Or reducing the premium. And you should change that portion of it. But I mean, most of those old policies, I mean, it depends the company, it depends, how it was built and everything like that, what riders are on it. Yeah. There may be some riders you want to drop off. But most of those older policies are fantastic base policies.
Yeah. I don't, want to mention life insurance companies' names, but a couple of big ones that have demutualized in the past, they still have policies on the books that still pay dividends, and they're screaming. Now I'm not talking about some of these newer companies that have been demutualized and taken over by these Canadian hedge fund companies. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about some of the older companies that are demutualized, in the 80s when all the life insurance companies forgot their heritage, right? And it's like, oh, no, we want to be a financial services company to all individuals. Okay, I digress. So, two, though, let me say this, that it's easy to build a life insurance policy with an inordinately high or a PUA premium that's too high, so I can gin up a higher internal rate of return, ROR, rate of return, or an IRR, internal rate of return. And we had this conversation not earlier this week, but we have them regularly. And it was a great point that Jake's like, well, yeah, let's say that one gins up, 4.75% rate of return, and the other one only produces a 4.3% rate of return. Well, the 4.75% rate of return is on pennies.
Yeah.
Pennies, little bitty old skinny amount.
I paid a premium for 7 years and then stopped paying premiums. Yeah. It's like, congratulations on that super high rate of return on $100,000. It's like,
Right.
good job.
Now, if you want to do that again, you got to buy another one and go through underwriting again.
Yeah, right.
Compared to, one that earns, I think I said 4.3 or whatever.
Yeah.
On volumes of money. Okay.
Yeah.
You think I'm going to squabble over 0.45?
No.
No. Because at the end of the day, life insurance company is going to do what it does. You can't control that other than you paying the premium, being an honest banker. That's it. It's all that capital. It's like, I'm going to earn 4.75 on 100 grand over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to earn 4.3 on 200 grand, or 100 grand that I can continue paying beyond the 10th year.
Yeah.
And all that capital. Now, wait, all that capital I have access to? You're going to give me access to 100,000 compared to 200,000?
Yeah. Right. Like, that's it.
Yeah. And then I'll go chase rates of returns, and with the life insurance company money, because I'm collateralizing the cash value. It's a great point, though. Yeah, you can get a higher rate of return on pennies.
People make games out of it, though. They really do. And that's... I said I wasn't going to beat up on people too much, but that's something that we see out there, right? Is, people kind of focused on rates of return. And, Nelson said this was not about rates of return, right? If we're really looking at these policies, do we want the highest rate of return, or do we want the highest volume of cash value increase per year? I want the highest cash value volume increase per year.
Yeah, but I don't want that with a dink rate of return. I want that with a legitimate rate of return.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. So, in my opinion, right, when we're talking about long term with these policies, because we got to think long range on this. This is one of Nelson's tenets, is thinking long range, right? We think long range. Okay, so the 4.75, right? Let's say it is, I'm not even bring policy ratios or anything like that into it. But let's just say, policy A is the 4.75. But, that 4.75, you're only paying premiums maybe, let's even give them 20 years worth of paying premiums. Right?
Yeah,
They're not going to be able to do that.
Generous, because most of them are 7 or 10 or 14 years at best.
I'm being super generous, as my dad's pointing out. Very generous here. And let's say the 4 point, what was it, the 4.3, or what would you say?
4.3 is
the 4.3, you could pay that premium for 40 years. Okay, so you take those two side by side. Now that 4.75, if you want to be able to pay that premium for 40 years, what do you have to do? Just like my dad said, a few minutes ago, what do you got to do? You got to go buy another policy at that point in time to be able to continue paying that high premiums. What period of time are you entering into, right? At that, you start another policy over again. That loss of liquidity immediately is hitting.
All the startup
It's like,
costs.
Congratulations, you have two 4.75 policies, but if you compared the volume of those policies to the volume of the other policy, maybe you've paid the exact same premiums over that long time period, but you're still going to have more cash value on the 4.3 policy. Well, why is that? Well, because now we're talking about volume and starting dates of these policies. So you're in 4.75 on a policy, but you started it 20 years after the first policy that's earning 4.3. So when you're talking about total volume of cash value, like way out in the future, 40 years out in the future, guess what? The 4.3 is going to look better, even if he's paid the same premiums. It's like starting policies over and over and over every 7 years, every 10 years, every 15 years. That, I don't care if the rate of return's higher on that. It's not going to look as good as a policy that's built properly and allows you to think long range and pay premiums long range. So you go back into that discussion about how big the base is or how big the base should be. It's like, if you're talking to an advisor, you're talking to somebody from NNI, and they're showing you a policy where you can pay premiums for 40 years, and you're talking to somebody else who's showing you a policy that can pay premiums for 7 years, and that person's like, well, look at the rate of return. Just understand that that's a game that they're playing. Like, at the end of the day, they're just trying to get you to say yes and sign the contract.
Well, they get paid, and the
life insurance company gets paid, and what, 2 out of 3 ain't bad? Is that what the old adage goes?
Yeah, but then too, the consumer, the prospective client, they get to feel a little bit better because now they don't have to look at 40 years of illustrated premium.
Yeah,
not knowing that. Like if they're looking at one that's paid for 7 years, the other that's 40 years, and maybe not knowing or realizing or being told about the non-forfeiture options of a life insurance policy. I can make a policy a 7 pay, a 5 pay, a 10 pay, a 15 pay, a 20 pay, a 25 pay, and I can make that permanent, or I can make that temporary if I know what I'm doing, and we know what we're doing. So my point is that, the agent, the advisor gets paid. The consumer, the prospective client, he gets to breathe easy. I don't have to, feel obligated to this 40 years of premium payments. But there's absolutely a game being played, and I don't want to beat anybody up, but I'm talking about concepts. But I'll get a little personal here. The person that wants to squabble over 3 bips or 4.5 bips is the same individual that's paying 20% in interest, 14% on HELOCs, and not even practicing honest banking with their own debt. Or they're the real estate investor that has no money, the cheap real estate investor. And listen, I don't want to go off on. I'm talking about concepts. I'm really, really getting to thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. And I love real estate. I love my real estate clients. I love everything. I just love peace and chicken grease here.
That's right.
Okay. But don't go paying all these third-party lenders all kinds of money, abdicating your responsibility of control in the banking function, and then squabble over a point or two, a 1/10 of a percent, a 20th of a percent, because it doesn't work. And then the idea, math is math is math. There's no question about that. And let me tell you, or let me encourage you, you're not going to out-math a life insurance company. You're not going to out-math Wall Street.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it. Anyway, so.
We kind of talked about that earlier this week, and I had said, and I think you agreed with me, maybe you want to expand on this a little bit more, but we were talking about, why rate of return has become such a big thing in the financial industry, right? Everyone uses rate of return. That's what they talk about, IRR, rate of return, whatever they want to, whatever rate of return they're wanting to talk about, right? Why is it such a big thing in that financial services industry? And I think we discussed, and we had kind of settled on it, that it was the abdication of thought. If you see the higher number here, and your financial advisor's like, well, you can earn this here, this 4.75 here, you're only going to earn 4.3 over here. It's like you don't have to think anymore. It's like,
what's
perfect.
the risk? Like, it's almost like like a red herring, but what's the risk? Which is just in the conversation. I agree with you. It is.
Yeah.
It's an abdication of responsibility. I don't have to be responsible for my money. I don't have to be responsible. To the point where I have to educate myself. I've got to spend a little time reading. I've got to spend some time paying attention. And I may not want to, I may want to read other stuff. But abdicating your responsibility of taking control, just being responsible of your own money, taking control of your own financial activities. I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Nelson, he wrote a great chapter, and it's in the back of his second book. And I agree. I think everybody should read that. It's Out of Egypt and On to Babylon, or Out of Babylon, Out of Egypt and into Babylon. And the whole thing is about, essentially slavery and humans and their constant need to enslave themselves to whatever it happens to be, whether it's, the financial services industry or the government, which is kind of what Nelson was getting at right there. Just drawing those parallels between, what the people said, the Israelites said they wanted a king because everyone else had a king. So they got a king. Congratulations, you have a king. And then what? You go into Egypt and you have your masters, and then it's a continuous cycle of abdicating that personal responsibility, of abdicating your thought and giving it to somebody with higher authority. And these people aren't any smarter than you are. Do you think Joe Biden's smarter than most of our listeners? No. If we talk about human intelligence just as a spectrum, right? The smartest man and the dumbest man, there's not a huge gigantic difference there. There is a difference. Don't get me. But if we think cosmically, right, on God's scale, right, we're thinking on.
I mean, I get they're both human.
We're thinking on like omnipotent scale, right? The smartest man and the dumbest man on the scale of omnipotence is absolute. There's almost no difference. So it just seems,
it's a bit of a stretch for me. I mean, okay. I've seen some real dumb people, but I get it.
My question is, who do you want controlling your life? The smartest man in the world, the dumbest man in the world? Doesn't even matter. Do you want anyone controlling your life? No. Do you trust other people to run your life the way you should run your life? No, absolutely not. And I think that was Nelson's point in the book, out of Egypt and on to Babylon, is just this consistent abdication of responsibility and thought. And you see that in the rate of return arguments. You see that in almost every argument out there. It's just like, I don't need to think anymore. I need to abdicate that responsibility. And don't get me wrong, it's okay to trust an advisor or trust somebody to do something, you don't have the time to do or you don't want to do. That can be okay. But you have to, what would you say, choose wisely. You can't choose haphazardly, and you shouldn't just choose the shiniest object out there, right? If you're going to, take hold of your personal finances, which I think you should do so with the infinite banking concept. Now, you need to partner with a smart advisor because you can't do that yourself. You just can't. Is the average person in the public, you can't just go buy a policy, an IBC policy. That's not how that works. You got to go to the Nelson Nash Institute, specifically to the practitioner finder. And I'll tell you, if you're watching some other person on YouTube that's a celebrity, whatever, influencer, I think is what they're called. You're watching those people and they're talking about the infinite banking concept and you like them. And you're like, maybe I want to do business with this person. Do me a favor, go type their name into the practitioner finder at the Nelson Nash Institute. Just go to Google, Nelson Nash Institute, pull up the homepage, go to the practitioner finder. It's one of the bars up there, and go type that person's name in there. If they're not there, they're not doing IBC. The infinite banking concept is specifically done through practitioners who are licensed and certified through the Nelson Nash Institute. So just do me that favor, because if they're not, that was another thing I really wanted to talk about today, and I don't know if we have the time.
We have time. Let me say that, if you want a competent, educated practitioner, just go to bankingwithlife.com or call my office, 817-790-0405. No disparagement to the community of the Nelson Nash Institute. I dearly love them. I have a special place in my heart for them. Very active with the Nelson Nash Institute. Been there since day one, 2013. However, it's like, that's what we do all day long, daylight to dark, right here, 20 miles south of Fort Worth, Texas, is we help our clients and prospective clients become their own banker with the proper, thorough foundation and building of policies, or a policy for our clients, custom. It's handmade. Every policy cannot look like every other policy. And Jake's right. If, because we don't promote, we don't put money behind this podcast at all. It's attraction rather than promotion. I'm a capitalist. I might start spending some ad revenue, tick some of those people off on the internet that, because you type in infinite banking or the Nelson Nash Institute and 5 advertisements come up before you get down to the authorized, Nelson Nash Institute, and it's the infinitebanking.org. That's where it is.
Yes.
Okay. So, or you could just go to bankingwithlife.com, push the button on the website that says become a client, share a little information with us, and we'll meet you where you're at, no matter where you're at financially, a little, a lot, complex, complicated, simple, compound, doesn't matter. I'm talking about your finances. We can, I'm just bold enough to say that we can improve your situation. All right.
You're bold, but you're right. So, and that's an excellent plug, by the way.
I didn't mean to throw you off, but if we're sending people somewhere, you might as well give them the shortcut to success.
Absolutely. Right? Come to us. Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to talk to you guys. I really do.
Right. He's waiting by the phone.
I'm waiting right now.
Wait. Oh, here comes a call. I'm kidding.
First caller.
So Jake and I went a little long in this episode, so we cut it into 2 parts. We're going to end part 1 here, pick up where we left off in part 2. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining us on the Banking with Life podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on that little notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher for weekly content.